Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I rise to speak about an issue that is of particular importance in my state of Michigan, preventing an oil spill in the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are a part of the way of life in Michigan, supporting our multi-billion-dollar agricultural, shipping, and tourism industries. An oil spill on this precious resource would be catastrophic for Michigan and all surrounding Great Lakes states. The Great Lakes are a critical drinking water source for 40 million people, and they contain 84% of North America's surface fresh water. Vessels moving through the Great Lakes carry goods and passengers across the region, and tourists in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York take in their beautiful coastlines each year. Unfortunately, Michiganders know all too well the devastating consequences of a pipeline break and what it can do to an economy and to its natural resources. 5 years ago, we experienced one of the largest inland oil spills in U.S. history with a 6-foot break in the Line 6B pipeline in Marshall, Michigan. Oil flowed for nearly 17 hours before it was eventually shut off, spilling more than 800,000 gallons of heavy crude, contaminating 35 miles of the Kalamazoo River, and ultimately racking up a cleanup cost of $1.2 billion. An independent investigation after the spill concluded that the pipeline operators' inadequate procedures, as well as weak federal regulations, all played a major role in this disastrous spill. The Kalamazoo disaster, along with several other devastating pipeline explosions and spills, prompted a sweeping pipeline safety bill to be signed into law in early 2012. Unfortunately, many of those rules and regulations have yet to be finalized by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA. I am very concerned about the potential for future spills in Michigan, especially from a pair of 60-year-old pipelines carrying oil and natural gas liquids through the Straits of Mackinac, a place where Lake Michigan and Lake Huron meet. The Straits of Mackinac have been called the worst possible place for an oil spill in the entire Great Lakes Basin. The strong currents in the Straits tend to reverse direction every few days, and they move water at a rate at over 10 times greater than the flow over Niagara Falls. A professor at the University of Michigan used computer modeling to estimate that a worst-case scenario oil slick moving east through the Straits could reach the shores of Mackinac City and Mackinac Island, our #1 tourist attraction, in just 3 hours. Even more troubling is the fact that Coast Guard officials have acknowledged that current oil spill response techniques are not adequate for open freshwater, let alone freshwater with heavy, thick ice, the ice that we find every season in the Straits of Mackinac. To make matters worse, response plan requirements for pipelines overseen by PHMSA at the federal level are seriously lacking. Information related to safety procedures, inspection reports, and worst-case scenarios are unavailable to the public. Even local emergency responders have been left in the dark. That's why I, along with my Michigan colleague and good friend Debbie Stabenow, introduced the Pipeline Improvement and Preventing Spills Act, which includes several common-sense provisions to prevent pipeline accidents and protect the Great Lakes from catastrophic crude oil spills. Our bill requires the U.S. Coast Guard and other agencies to independently assess oil spill response and cleanup activities and techniques for the Great Lakes, specifically taking into account the cleanup response of an oil spill under solid, thick ice or ice-choked waters. My legislation requires the Department of Transportation and the National Academies to examine risk associated with pipelines in the Great Lakes and other waterways in the region, including an analysis of alternatives to the Straits oil pipeline. This bill would also increase transparency by ensuring residents are notified about pipelines near their property and compels operators and regulators to make information publicly available. My legislation will also expand safety features to pipelines in high-consequence areas, creating jobs for pipe fitters and other professions while protecting dense population centers, drinking water, and environmentally sensitive areas. Finally, this bill will eliminate the future risk of a disastrous crude oil spill from tanker vessels on the Great Lakes. Currently, crude oil is not shipped by tankers on the Great Lakes. However, it is increasingly being looked at as an option. Given the difficulty of cleaning up heavy oil in open freshwater, my bill will take that option off the table to ensure that we will not jeopardize our $7 billion Great Lakes fishing industry. The Pipeline Improvement and Preventing Spills Act is endorsed and supported by a number of groups, including the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, the Pipe Fitters and Plumbers, and HVAC Tex Local 111, Traverse City Tourism, the Great Lakes Fishing Commission, Michigan Steelhead and Salmon Fishermen's Association, National Wildlife Federation, and the Alliance for the Great Lakes, just to name a few. The Senate Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over pipeline safety, will be considering pipeline legislation in the next few weeks, and I look forward to building support for provisions in my bill. Our country continues to record highs in domestic energy production, but we must remain vigilant when it comes to energy transportation. Through strong oversight, leadership from the industry, and technological innovation, I firmly believe that we can and we must continue to meet our energy needs in the safest way possible while preserving treasures like the Great Lakes for future generations. I yield the floor.